You stood in the dim glow of the kitchen around 8:30 on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary evening where the commute had settled into your shoulders like an old coat you couldn't quite shake off. The fridge door opened with its familiar soft hum, revealing half a carton of milk and some wilting greens that didn't inspire anything. Your thumb hovered over the takeout app almost by habit. No grand plan, no craving for something exotic, just the quiet pull toward the usual Indian place down the street, the one whose portions always felt generous and whose delivery driver knew the building entrance by now. You added the butter chicken, the garlic naan, and that mango lassi you sometimes skipped but never really regretted. The total crept past $28 before the free delivery threshold kicked in. You tapped confirm without much ceremony. The phone slipped back into your pocket, and the apartment returned to its evening stillness, the small decision already fading into the background of the night. That morning, the bank notification had pinged as it always did, the latest paycheck landing with a little more weight than it carried a couple of years ago. $480 extra each month after everything was taken out. Health insurance, taxes, the retirement contribution you barely noticed anymore. You remembered the first time that bump appeared, how it had felt almost celebratory for a week or two. Back then, the same Tuesday evening might have ended with a cheaper burrito bowl or something pulled together from whatever was left in the pantry. Now, the numbers had simply scaled. Last month, the combined food delivery and restaurant charges sat just under $610. Not a single blowout night, just a handful of evenings like this one, repeated across the calendar until they formed their own steady rhythm in the spending summary. The math lingered there if you let your eyes rest on the screen a moment longer than usual. Overall, income up almost 30% since that first raise 3 years back. Yet the balance in the main savings account still hovered within shouting distance of where it had been when the extra money first started arriving. The difference hadn't disappeared into flashy trips or sudden luxuries you could point to in photos. It had dissolved into the grain of daily life. The monthly subscription for the better coffee beans that arrived like clockwork, the occasional ride share on rainy mornings instead of waiting for the bus, the upgraded streaming tiers because buffering during a call felt intolerable now. Each adjustment felt incremental, almost invisible at the time, small permissions granted because the new income made the old friction feel unnecessary. The total never announced itself loudly. It simply kept step with the raises, like a quiet companion that had learned to mirror your pace without drawing attention. There was a gentle comfort wrapped around the pattern, the kind that didn't require justification or debate. These weren't wild splurges that needed rationalizing in the middle of the night. They were the soft ways the day was allowed to end after it had already asked enough of you. The mind filed each one neatly under reasonable now, the same mental folder it once used for cheaper versions of the same meals. The income had grown, but the internal gauge that decided what counted as acceptable had quietly redrawn its boundaries, expanding just enough to absorb the increase without ever forcing a real conversation with yourself about where the money was actually landing. You thought about your friend Marcus during one of those evenings, the one who still earned close to what you had been making at the beginning of that stretch. No big promotions, no sudden windfalls, just steady work and the same city expenses everyone carried. A few weeks earlier, you had grabbed coffee with him on a Saturday afternoon. He mentioned the same kind of Tuesday fatigue, the same pull toward takeout after a long day. Then he described almost offhandedly how he had gotten into the habit of cooking double batches on Sunday afternoons, simple stews or roasted vegetables that reheated easily and filled the fridge for the week ahead. To him, the delivery order still carried a visible weight, something he could weigh against the quiet accumulation happening elsewhere in his accounts. His version of the month still left a noticeable gap at the end, the kind that sat untouched and slowly compounded without fanfare. He didn't frame it as discipline or sacrifice. He simply moved through the same ordinary moments from a slightly different vantage point, where the extra dollar had never arrived to blur the edges of the decision. The realization settled in without any dramatic shift in the room's lighting or the hum of the refrigerator. The additional income hadn't rewritten the underlying script of how the days unfolded. It had simply widened the margins around the same familiar scenes, allowing the old habits to continue in softer, more expensive clothing. The raises had arrived, the lifestyle had adjusted in perfect parallel, and the space between income and forward movement remained strangely consistent, like two lines on a graph that had learned to run alongside each other without ever quite meeting. If these kinds of evenings leave a faint trace that lingers, the longer observations continue in the same unhurried tone.